This episode is sponsored by Kerkering Barberio, your trusted partner in tax, audit, and outsourced accounting services. Serving Sarasota, Manatee, and the greater Tampa Bay area for over 50 years, KB helps clients achieve their personal and business goals. Visit kbgrp.com to learn more. Wellen Park CEO Rick Severance is a leader in one of the most watched and tracked industries in Florida, home building and land development. The Business Observer writes often about these sectors, covering the people, players, and of course the big deals. To read these stories and more, subscribe to the Business Observer. Go to businessobserverfl.com to subscribe. Hello and welcome to the Business Observer from the Corner Office podcast. I'm Mark Gordon, managing editor of the Business Observer. Today's guest is Rick Severance, president of Wellen Park. Rick, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Well, you've had a really, I think, very distinguished career in real estate and land development. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into what Wellen Park is and kind of what the mission and objective is there. Before we get into that, we're going to just go a couple of rapid fire questions, get our audience to know you a little bit. Look at he's loosening up his shoulders. He's ready. Well, one of the things I want to start with, I thought it was really interesting, your background. You've worked in a lot of places in Florida. You've worked on the East Coast. You've worked of Florida. You've worked in the Panhandle of Florida. Obviously, the Sarasota area, Sarasota Venice area as well. What is your favorite place to visit in Florida?
Favorite place to visit in Florida? I like Siesta Key a lot. I really do. And I like North Captiva. My wife and I like to just get on a boat and go to North Captiva for the weekend. You feel like you're in another, space and time because there's no cars. And so that's kind of fun. And it's that escapism that more than anything else. So I think there's so many amazing spots in Florida. Maybe I need to broaden my horizons a little bit, but I like the drive.
Yeah. Well, those are two pretty amazing spots. Okay, second question, a little bit more technology focused. What is the most used app on your phone? What app do you use the most on your phone?
Outside of Outlook?
Could be Outlook. That could be your most used app.
It's definitely my most used app is Outlook for sure. Yep.
Yeah. And what is on a good day, what would be your morning routine? Like when you're thriving, what is your morning routine?
Get up at 5:15 or 5:30, run 4 miles, usually, something around there. Shower, have a cup of coffee, jump in the car. I still live in Fort Myers, so I have an hour commute to work. So I got to get up and rock and roll. And then my favorite part about the morning commute, because I look at it as a positive thing, I have to anyway, strategize, pray, really get prepared for the day. So when I walk in the office, I like to be a morning person and in pretty early so that I can get out what I need to get out because I think sometimes we're so beholden to our emails that you don't ever have a time to actually strategize. So I use that morning to do that.
Yeah, the car time for sure. I was gonna, as bonus question, do you listen to podcasts, music? It sounds like you get ready for the day there in the car.
I do listen to podcasts, and I listen to music as well. I usually do that on the way home, and then I've started writing a book, to be honest with you. And so I'll talk into my phone and work work on chapters. I feel like it's a good use of the time, and it makes the time go pretty quickly. So yeah, that's what I've been doing.
That's amazing. Can you say what the book is on?
Sure. It's on placemaking. I mean, so much of what I've done has been, placemaking and I've had so many people say, "Oh my gosh, you have to tell that story. You have to tell that story." So it's been a layered intent, and it's also a look back to pay homage to the people who I learned so much from, and the places that I've been so privileged to work in. So and it transcends just real estate development. Placemaking is so many more things than just that. So that's been kind of fun.
That's awesome. It's a great segue, Rick, because that's a lot of what we talk about on this podcast is leadership lessons and what you've learned. And again, you've worked for these pretty stellar organizations, Babcock Ranch and St. Joe. I actually knew St. Joe because worked in Jacksonville 25 years ago, and I knew some of the people there. And so obviously a big landowner, big land development company. And Babcock Ranch is obviously Babcock Ranch, which is another big project. How did you get into that? Even start, tell me before that, how did you get into land development and get into working for some of those big entities?
So I was a management consultant with Ernst and Young, and my subject matter specialty in practice was large scale resort and real estate developers and developments. And so I was the interim CEO of Seaside in the Panhandle when the Panhandle was not what it is today,
Yeah.
and then ultimately became the CEO of Seaside, which changed the kind of framework for my future in terms of master plan communities and second home communities. So that's really where everything started.
Yeah.
I actually was on the team that did the original work for the Watercolor Inn before Watercolor or Water Sound were even there.
Right.
So I spent a lot of time on 30A, and the attention to detail and 30A has transcended my career scale wise, because it's a much smaller scale. But what I
Hmm.
found is the same decisions. It's just a matter of you're making a decision for 20,000 acres instead of 2,000 acres,
Yeah. Yeah, and so tell us, what did you learn, in terms of leadership, whether it was St. Joe or later at Babcock Ranch or some of those other entities you worked at in between? What are some lessons that stand out to you that you learned at those organizations?
I would say no matter what, and certainly it was clear with Sid at Babcock, you start with a clear vision.
Yeah.
And you have to really work on the planning portion of settling on the vision and then be committed to it. And that may take some different iterations. I think executing really well on the small details is extremely important, because regardless, people are going to notice. People are going to notice, builders are going to notice, partners are going to notice, buyers are going to notice the small things, not just the large things, but the
Yeah.
small things. So and in creating that vision, making sure you're not afraid to bring the right talent to the table to make it happen, because I think a lot of people do visioning sessions, but it falls down on implementation. So holding people accountable to the implementation, I think, is probably one of the leadership characteristics that I've been proud of, because
Yeah.
it's served me well.
Yeah, and obviously you're talking about Sid Kitson with Babcock Ranch and what he has built there. So you saw him do that in his perseverance to stick to the vision, because that was a long time in gelling. I think people look at Babcock Ranch now and they're like, this is pretty amazing, but tell us about that sort of process that it took to get to where they are today.
It was commitment, and there's an amazing partner, financial partner, in that commitment to when you could start getting it out of the ground. And I was just there for 3.5 years. Getting it out of the ground and doing
Yeah.
all the first sales and the development of the downtown, the first downtown. Um, y- you know, when and I don't want to speak for Sid, but he was so passionate about his vision and the hallmarks of what Babcock Ranch was intended to be, and he was really committed to ensuring that all of those hallmarks had a voice and had a presence. So I feel like that still resonates today. My parents live in Babcock, so and I live down there in that
Yeah.
area. So I see how what it's become from the original vision to when we first started to where it is now. So
Yeah.
it's a great example of his commitment over almost 20 years to
Yeah.
get it to where it is today.
Well, that's it. 20. It's a long time, as we said, persistence and
Right.
perseverance. So, at some point you joined Wellen Park. Tell us a sort of two pronged question. What drew you to Wellen Park, and what is Wellen Park? Right. What's sort of the mission and vision of Wellen Park?
So Wellen was 11,000 acre master plan community. What was exciting to me was the blank canvas. I
Yeah.
was brought in to modify the brand. It used to be called the West Villages. We didn't know the name, the trademark, or the URL for the West Villages. So for me, it was really important to create our own destiny, naming it Wellen Park. Wellen is means water and waves in Dutch and in German, respectively. Park, it just resonates like Baldwin Park or Hyde Park or Winter Park.
Sure.
Uh, the intent was to monetize it, and the asset was holding, but there really wasn't much land development. And so I was able to um, get recruited away in order to execute on my vision for what I thought it needed to be or what it could be.
Yeah.
And the intent was there was only 5 builders when I first showed up about 6 years ago, and I think we have 18 now, including the diversification for me is what truly a master plan sets a master plan apart. And so it's not just a bedroom community. We've got healthcare, hospitals, retail, commercial. We have a Costco, 30 miles worth of trails. We have the Braves Stadium, spring training facility embedded in there. We have 5 schools, including a college, a brand new high school under development. So it's the kit of parts or the suite of parts that makes Wellen Park so interesting. Plus, in candor, we're only 8.5 miles from the beach.
Yeah.
So, you know, the resiliency of not being on the coast, but close to the coast. And we're only a mile and a half from the widest part of the Mayaca River. So we're really fortunate in terms of the placement because it also sits on US 41. So it's
Yeah.
been very, very positive.
Yes, you have all those elements, and you touched on this with some of the other projects. I'm curious how you have dealt with as a leader, because you also have a lot of end users in a way, right? You have obviously you have homeowners, home buyers, but you have the builders, and then you mentioned all the retailers, and so you have landlords, and you have a lot of different parts, and then there's CDDs and HOAs and all these other things that come into play. As a leader, how do you sort of manage this orchestra of things?
You know, you talked about leadership earlier. Somebody was asking me, well, why you? And sometimes I think I'm uniquely qualified for this based on the Swiss Army knife skill set.
Hmm.
I've been an interim CEO of a luxury retail
Yeah,
watch and jewelry company in the Cayman Islands. Who would have thought that would have translated to being in charge of leasing today in this environment? So I really feel I've been very fortunate that those experiences have lent themselves to what I do. I also enjoy that not every day is the same.
yeah,
Um, and you don't need to be a subject matter expert at every single discipline to be a good leader. You do need to hire good people so that you can rely on them and learn from them. But I would say for me, it's being very intentional, regardless of the audience,
yeah,
regardless of the stakeholder. Be very intentional about learning, but also adding value, and come to it from a place of grace. In that grace-based management, assume the best, not the worst.
yeah,
We're in a society today that really doesn't do that very well. And
yeah.
so I try to do that when dealing with whomever, whether that's an HOA or it's a tenant or it's somebody in the downtown who's a visitor. You
Yeah,
have to be balanced.
yeah, yeah. It's a really I like that. Assume the best, not the worst. That's a good lesson for I think any leader when you're going into what could be a confrontational conversation or just
Sure.
not even confrontational, but just a difficult management conversation to hold somebody accountable. To not assume that they were doing it for bad reasons, but assume that the best.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
Yeah,
That's hard, by the way. I
yeah,
mean, I think it's no different than how we parent, but you
yeah,
have to make a conscious choice to go in open-minded and to learn and not to assume that there was ill motivation to whatever has happened. And yeah, you got to work on it though.
yeah,
I don't think it's natural for us. I think you have
yeah.
to work on it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you talked about the team. What do you look for in a leader? What are some characteristics that stand out to you in terms of whether it's promoting somebody or encouraging somebody to move up in your organization?
Great question. I think everyone's going to say strong work ethic or someone who's willing to learn at any level. But effective listening is a key attribute. Drive and ambition. How do you know that? You just do because for me, I've noticed, I don't really like to hire or I choose not to hire the not my job mentality. It's not my job.
Yeah,
So here's my functional responsibilities. Here's what you pay me for. But yet we need everyone to jump in to help do this or stay an extra half hour or whatever. The folks that are not willing to do that, those are folks that are probably not going to get promoted and they're not going to get raises. Candidly, they want to give you the bare minimum. They're going to get the bare minimum. So I think drive and ambition is really important. And I love the folks that are willing to like come into my doorway and say, "Hey, do you need help with?" Or, "I heard this in that meeting. Can I jump in on that call?" Because they just want to increase their skill set, right?
Yeah.
And I really like that type of manager or employee
Yeah, to show that. Yeah, that's great. To show that they
initially.
want to do that, to take on that. That's a
Yep.
really good point. Going back through your career, Rick, what's a piece of leadership advice that sticks out to you that you've used in different roles that you've had?
I said lead from a place of grace. Also, I think give thanks. We're you know Give thanks to the people and the team around you for their contributions. There's not a single thing that's been accomplished at Wellen Park that hasn't been because of this amazing team. And this amazing team, there's only 11, 12 of us. I mean, it's very small.
Really?
Yeah,
No.
yeah, there's only 11. I'm sorry, there's 13 now. There's 13 in our office.
Wow.
So the team is the consultants that came
Yeah.
in, giving them credit, right? It's the person, the first line of defense, which is an ambassador that may not sell, but they're the first impression. It's the accounting to make sure the bills get out on time, or it's everybody. And our engineers and our land development guys are just the best I've ever worked with. So for me, it's give and give thanks to the team that has allowed us to be successful. And that's not me, that's the team.
Yeah. Yeah. Very important and good advice. Another thing in leadership is sometimes you have to deal with things that don't go your way. Whether that's a project that gets denied by the county or some municipality. I'm sure you've experienced that in your career, but other setbacks. As a leader, how have you dealt with setbacks or mistakes or things that just didn't go the way that you had anticipated or hoped?
Um, Pivot quickly. I say that a lot
Yeah,
because I think we've been doing this for years. So in your gut when something isn't going in the right direction. You have a
yeah,
or the talent or the person you've put, in play is on the wrong seat on the bus. I mean, you just know it. It's instinctive. And so we want so badly to allow someone the opportunity to be successful, but after proving that they can't be, you just got to pivot quickly. And
yeah,
now it's the same as relates to land planning or a tenant selection. If you know it's not working, I think for the benefit of everybody, pivot quickly. And that may be you're closing a door, but opening a window even for the person, the tenant, the builder as well.
yeah.
Giving them an opportunity to gracefully exit stage right. And as my buddy says, pursue excellence elsewhere,
Pursue
right? Isn't
excellence.
that a nice way of saying, hey, it's time, right? Go
It's
pursue excellence
time for
elsewhere. So pivot quickly for me would be
yes.
something that I've learned the most from
Don't let
setbacks.
the door hit you. Yes.
I
Awesome.
didn't say that. You said
No, I said that. I said that. That was the New Yorker in me. But pursue excellence elsewhere. I like it. All right, Rick. So we're mid to late February. Tell us what can we expect at Wellen Park, just in terms of expansion, growth, building. Obviously, as I said, we're mid to late February. That means the Braves are starting up soon. But what can we expect the next few months at Wellen Park?
that. Brave spring training starts Sunday the 23rd. We love that partnership. Downtown's been amazing. We had our arts festival and our artscape this past weekend. We had 5,000 people on Saturday and 5,000 people on Sunday. So downtown is under construction of phase two, which we needed. We brought forward phase two, which is an extra, call it 45,000 square feet of mixed use and retail, almost 3 years early because there was so much pent up demand when we created the space. And then we're layering in new builders. So one of the things I think I'm most proud of is the diversification of product. So, regardless, Mr. Smith moves down from Columbus, Ohio, and he has opportunities. If he's got a budget for 3.5 million, we have a house for you. If you have a budget where you can rent and you can only rent for 1,900, we have a place for you as well. I really like that we have the gamut now in terms of diversification of product. And we just opened a brand new neighborhood with 5 new builders, David Weekly, Homes by Town, ICI, MI, Neil's in there, and Matamy's in there. That launched, I'm going to say 30 days ago. And I think I had one of the guys call me yesterday. They sold 4 houses last week. We
Really?
sold,
Wow.
we sold whatever 90 houses in January.
The
Those are really good numbers for us. We're
y-
really excited about that.
the pipeline of Florida from the Midwest and the Northeast is still open.
It
It's
is.
it
And you know what, for us, what we're getting, and I think it has to do with the quality of education in Sarasota County, we're
yeah,
getting migration. Our top feeder market is in the state of Florida, Miami, Orlando, and Tampa.
really in state people
In-state
moving.
migration is our number.
Interesting.
40% of all of our sales are in-state migration.
Huh. That's great too.
And I think
Excellent.
that's part, and they're more families than they are my parents' age.
Yeah,
And I think that has a lot to do with the quality of life that Wellen Park offers, the proximity to all these great
sure.
attributes, but also the school systems.
An A-rated school district is a big asset. No question.
For sure. And
Yeah,
optionality, right? You have
yeah,
private, you have STEM schools, you have charter schools, you
yeah,
have the collegiate high school. So that's very positive.
yeah. Excellent. Well, Rick Severance, president of Wellen Park, thank you so much for joining us on the
My,
From the Corner Office podcast.
thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Business Observer From the Corner Office podcast. I'm your host, Mark Gordy. This podcast was produced by Reed Corley of the Corley Company in Sarasota. To hear more episodes of From the Corner Office podcast, go to businessobserverfl.com.